Good morning, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the second episode of the UConn Daily Podcast. This is Aman Kidwai, joined by John Silver, here to talk all things UConn sports. John, how are you doing today?
I'm well, Aman. A split decision last night, but we're doing pretty well considering.
I know who's doing this where there's UConn men's and women's games on the same day. We're having this like two games in a row. I don't love it. It's quite quite a strain on me and my personal resources, but we will persevere. Another team that's strained is the UConn women's basketball squad, seemingly constantly dealing with injuries. AZ Fudd at the beginning of this season, pretty much everyone on the roster over the last 2 years. And now, again, John, Paige Bueckers goes down with an injury at the Villanova game. They played their first game without Paige last night. We know that, the Big East schedule is not going to be too challenging. But, thoughts on Paige Bueckers going down one more time and what it means for this UConn women's squad?
Well, whenever Paige falls down in a game, my heart stops because it's not happening unless she's on the floor. They'll make the tournament. They'll probably even get to the Sweet 16 if she's not there. But this is the UConn women. It's the Final Four, and it's been a long time since they won a national title. I mean, in UConn women's years, the way it goes, and so I'm concerned. I don't think one of the things that Gino Auriemma has always been good at is honest. If he thinks she's only going to be out a week, it should be fine. Then I'm going to believe him when he says that. But knee injury, Bueckers, I mean, she's lost 2.5 years of her career to it. Of course, I'd like to have seen what she would have become if she never got hurt. But then she wouldn't be here this year anyways. But, mildly concerned, not at the wins and losses, it's just the grand scheme of things. Because I I was at the game last night in Hartford. And they could have. There might be walk-ons on the UConn campus that could beat that Xavier team. I mean, come on. Yeah. They scored 10 points at the half. So it was a good game for Paige to sit out and to let other people eat. Especially like Ashlyn Shade out there, LFE starting. So that's good, but. It's always in the back of my mind, and Paige will play her, so she's not going to tell anybody. I'm worried. Anytime she's not 100%, caught me concerned.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the thing. They need Paige at 100%, obviously, right? And sure, they can survive a stretch, like you're saying. If this is a 1 to 2 week thing, not the most serious injury, similar to AZ's injury at the beginning of this year. Then, sure, that's fine. But like you're saying, if there's any sort of extended period, if there's any aggravation of an injury, this is the kind of injury that can beget a second injury. I don't want to talk about that. Even I don't want to bring that idea into the universe. But I think we've seen enough sports to know where, when a minor injury can turn into a major injury. And that's the fear with someone who this has happened with before. And even with Paige on the roster, to just talk about this team more broadly, there's been this kind of roiling concern over the last 3, 4, 7 years. Does anyone on this team have that dog in them? Does anyone really want to win at all costs the way a Diana Taurasi, did back in the day, or the way a Brianna Stewart did back in the day? And, again, of course, those teams were loaded with talent. They stayed fully healthy. And so that has, affected UConn's trajectory here. But in other games, we already saw at full health, the USC game this year at home, losing a close one. So this is something where, we talk about it a lot. There's an opportunity here for some other folks to step up and gain the confidence that they need for someone else besides Bueckers to be a go-to player in March when it counts, because you have way too much talent on the roster for that to even be the case, in my opinion. That should not be the situation. It doesn't matter if 2 people are hurt. You've got to have other people. Your roster's loaded with 5 stars. And in this case, Caitlin Chen, one of the most highly sought after transfer recruits on the roster as well. You have to turn that into a winning team, and you have to find a way for them to be motivated more. And so I'm hoping what we see in these next few weeks is some other people looking to step up. I think maybe Fudd has the ability to do that, but she really has not played very much. So I think this is going to be that stretch for her to do it.
Yeah. So especially with Fudd, I'm always impressed with Ashlyn Shade's motor. She's aggressive. If we could put Fudd's skill set with Ashlyn Shade's demeanor, I think that you really got something. I think Sarah Strong's that type of player, physical, and that's what I think that's what they're missing, is that physical play. And Paige has enough hunger for the whole team. And that's the one thing is the one concern I have, and this is born out of the USC game, is I felt they were really small, and they could get really beat up inside. So I did like that Gino had El Afi and Strong in the starting lineup. I think that size will help them. They're not as quick, they're not as dynamic, but size helps. They have shooters. They have to be able to protect the rim. They have to be able to be physical out there. And we'll see what if they get a shot at USC again, or some of the other top teams out there that are more physical and athletic and long. But I think they're going to need that double big lineup, because they're sorely missing someone like Aubrey Griffin, who is that kind of like physical swing wing inside player, who's athletic, and that's the one piece I'd say they're missing on this team right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I really like, of course, obviously, when you have the number one overall recruit, but she's doing great, meeting exceeding expectations. Someone clearly that UConn can count on at an early stage, and that's of course outstanding. And El Alfi, again, talk about some injury was not there last year, might have helped. You can see how her presence might have helped even off the bench, or in any capacity. But I agree. I like what the combination of them has to offer. That is something new for UConn. And then, just going to have to see if more people can step up. Again, upcoming schedule: Georgetown, St. John's, Seton Hall, Villanova. Nothing too much to worry about. Creighton and DePaul after that. Some of the better teams in the Big East. Still not too scary, even though both of those games are on the road. Their real next big one is at Tennessee, February 6th. But even Tennessee, not that special of a team this year. Rivalry really in name and spirit only, and history. Certainly not with what's going on the court or in the country these days. And of course, February 16th, they're at South Carolina. So a couple of more measuring points left in the rest of this season. Really, that South Carolina game, I mean, who knows what to expect in that one, but we shall see with this squad. Hopes will always be high, and like you said, expectations, they don't go down, even despite the championship drought, even despite a really notable improvement by the rest of the country. You have to note that here. But UConn fans want championships. They want the Final Four. That's in question this year, with or without Paige, quite frankly.
Yeah, I really think I'm on that. This shows the depth of women's basketball. And I go back to the famous Dan Shaughnessy of the Boston Globe is UConn women are ruining women's basketball, which is, I look at that era of UConn women with Breanna Stewart and whatnot as kind of like the UCLA of the late 60s, early 70s. And what they did is they raised the level of game, the level of game of women worldwide. Now there's so many players now that even if UConn gets its 4 targets, there's now there's 15, 20 players, when in the past there was maybe 5 or 6, and they'd be split between 2 or 3 teams a year. So there are a lot of good women's basketball teams out there, and they play a really good style of basketball. And I think UConn still is in the mix. It's harder now than it was.
Of course, yeah. And that's again where maybe fan sentiment needs to come down to reality. Is just that this is not 1996. This is not 2006, and it's not even 2016. Like you're saying, I mean, those 4 championships in a row, we're not going to ever see that again. And we knew that probably in that moment, but probably did not think there'd be 0 championships, 8 years later. But that's the level of competition, and then a little bit of unfortunate injury luck, really. So that's the state of affairs for the UConn women's basketball squad. We shall see. But hey, the seasons are a lot more interesting, and I think that's cool. As someone covering the team, at least it's interesting, and at least we're curious what's going to happen in March, rather than we know what's going to happen. Lately, with the men's basketball team, John, we have known what's going to happen as well. They had a really dominant run through these last 2 years. Hit some reality checks this season, with especially the 3 losses at Maui. Now, at this current juncture, Liam McNeely's down, and very much realizing, what happens when 7 NBA players leave your roster in 2 years, and then 1 gets injured, and all of a sudden you are back on earth with the normal people. Doesn't matter how great your coach is. Doesn't matter what trophies are in your trophy case. The Huskies fought for their lives on Sunday to beat Providence at home, a Providence team that is 7-7 and missing their best player. So concern. And then Wednesday night, they go into Villanova, play a very weird game. A very weird game. I cannot describe anything that happened for the first 38 minutes besides, UConn was really inconsistent and Villanova's scores were getting theirs. And then in the last 2 minutes, we saw a little bit of a lack of clutch play, a lack of playmaking. And then Alex Karaban at the free throw line, 2 seconds left in the game, 3 seconds left in the game, shooting 2 free throws with UConn down 1. As a UConn fan, can't imagine a better scenario to be in. Your leading guy, 2 free throws, you're down 1. Even if he misses 1, you can imagine you're going to tie the game still. And Karaban misses both. To this moment, at this exact moment, still 12, 15 hours after it's happened, I'm still shocked that it has occurred, John. What are your thoughts after this 1-1 stretch so far through the week, the tight game against Providence, and the loss at Villanova?
I think the number one thing is the Karaman missed free throws is just stunning to me. And everybody's like, well, what are the chances he missed 2? Well, we can calculate that. He's an 82% free throw shooter. So there's an 18% chance he's going to miss a free throw, right? So what are the chances he missed 2 straight? That's 3% chance.
18% of 18.
18. 3% chance he was going to miss 2 consecutive free throws. That's a tough one for us to take as fans and as even media people looking at this game. I'd be like, I would take that Karaban on the line to either send the game overtime or even win it with 2. I take that 100% of the time. You know what? That will never happen to him again for the rest of his basketball career. There's just no chance that he'll miss 2 straight free throws like that again, like in that situation. It's unfortunate for him because he's been a very, very good player to the point where of almost every big moment of the last 3 years he's been involved in. I can't stand when sometimes you go on social media. I won't say the account, but they're saying he choked, this, that. I mean, he missed 2 free throws. It happens. It's just there is a element of chance. It's not that he choked. It's just he missed 2 free throws. Nobody makes every single shot. They concerns me with them is granted I was at the women's game, so I was following the game on the small little screen in between. Decided to watch the game until I had a very good long look at this game on the phone. But one of the things is if you look at their points, okay, 66 points yesterday, that's 14 below their average. So you'd assume they didn't have a good offensive night, right? Well, look at the box score. They're 27 of 50 shooting. They shot 47% from the floor. 47%. They shot 54% from the floor. Okay, they didn't shoot good from 3. They're 10 of 27 from 3. Okay.
Decent.
So they're executing, right? So there's two things they won the rebounding battle by double digits. So when I look at this team, and here's the concern for me, the Providence game and the Villanova game, slow starts. That concerns me. That means is this, there's still, I think that's that McNeely effect. McNeely is kind of like their a playmaker in a half court when they get moving. Well, I love Dan Hurley's offense, and they're executing it brilliantly, and they even executed it yesterday. I like the shots they got. But here's the problem that I see with the team is there's no Tristan Newton, and that's saying a great, he's a first-team All-American player, NBA player, okay? But who has that type of skill set to get downhill, score, pass, and create? The only one on the team is Diarra that can do that. McNeely can too, but that's kind of what they're missing is when things break down late in the shot clock, how do you create a shot? It's taken them a long time to create good shots. They took 50 field goals in 40 minutes of game time. 27 of those were threes. So, it's 23 two-point shots. They are executing the offense. They're getting what they want shot-wise, but they have to work for it because they're lacking that ability to break down one-on-one moves. I think they need to they don't need to run more, which I always want teams to run more, especially when you're athletic. But they're so good in the half court, you don't want to create turnovers. Well, on offense is when you are that good at executing, you want to get into more offense. They need to get more shots up. That means cut down the turnovers. 15 points off turnovers yesterday. That means getting on the boards if you get offensive rebounds, but they did that pretty decently. It's taken them a long time to get open shots, maybe a little too deliberate. I don't know how what more do you want? If I said they went to Villanova, shot 54% from the floor and 10 of 27 from three, that's great. But then you look at the free throw differential, they're minus 10 from the line. That shows a lack of ability to take people off the dribble and foul. People are just defending them. They're not fouling. They don't turn people over. The lack of physical play on offense that I'm worried about.
Yeah, I mean, to your point about the ball handling, that's probably why they had Mahaney in the starting lineup to begin with. They wanted a little bit more, playmaking, ball handling out there, and it just didn't work out. And then now with McNeely out, they're going to have to find, like you're saying, someone else to do that. Mahaney did a good job in the Providence game, scoring 15 points, making some, good decisions, looking more solid on defense. Not so much in the Villanova game, finishing with 0 points on the night. I mean, I think you mentioned some of the challenges there. I think with the Villanova game, it's all on the turnovers. Like you're saying, everything else in the box score, it looks good. It looks quite good. You can't really say, Providence, for example, they got dominated on the boards. And you can say, oh, well, that plus, Providence shooting well, that can help explain it. UConn not having a great shooting night. But like you're saying, 54%, the execution's good, 23 assists on 27 field goals, that's incredible stuff. Yeah, they got to be sharper. You can't turn it over like that. And then I just, I do think late in the game, man, they had that. They had 3-4 possessions. They got the ball back out of bounds, after missing shots in the final minute, getting the ball back 2-3 more times, and not getting that there. To me, that's the problem. And then, to go to Alex Karaban, like you're saying, I mean, he's an incredible player. He's a very important player for this team, has been for the entire time he has been here. This year, in a new role, my concern is not those free throws, which, like you're saying, has not happened in his career to date, where he goes 0 for 2 at the line, probably will not happen again. My bigger concern for Karaban, look at his first half stat line. After the first half in this game, no Liam McNeely, he's 1 for 3 from the field with 2 points. So for me, these free throws, it's super unfortunate. It's crazy for it to happen. Dan Hurley said something like, look, basketball players experience highs and lows. His first 2 years at UConn have basically been a fairy tale. Go home, look at your championship rings, and go get ready for Georgetown. And that's where, as if you've observed Alex Karaban for a long time, he's going to do that. Alex Karaban operates like a pro already. He's high character, high integrity. He's not going to be fazed by any of this. He's had stretches where his three doesn't fall and he powers right through it. I think he'll power through this as well because that's the kind of character guy he is. My bigger concern is he up for the role of really being the alpha of this team? And I'm not sure if we have seen that so far. And, Liam McNeely allowed him to kind of I don't want to say a back seat. He's the team's leading scorer, but to take a back seat on the assertiveness front. And I was hopeful that with McNeely out, we would see fully activated alpha Karaban. And I don't think we have. So that's something that I do need to see from Karaban. Again, free throws, very unfortunate, too bad. What I need to see is more of that killer instinct that we saw from him in those final minutes of the second half when UConn was coming back. We need him to do that for 40 minutes, and I'm not so sure if we've seen that yet from him.
Yeah, you bring up a good point, and this is where his basketball IQ is actually hurting him in this sense. And he's a really smart player, and I think at the NBA level, he's going to be they're going to love him as a bench piece off the NBA because he can pass, has some size. I don't know how he'll defend NBA wings, but you can scheme around that in certain places, and then he can shoot, pass, and rebound a bit at his size. But his IQ and how he's been played basketball his entire life is he's combined his smarts and his understanding of the game with shooting and skill, and it's all high level. But what's missing is he's very efficient, and if it's not a good shot and it's not a good percentage play, he defaults to, okay, let me see if somebody else can get a better shot, because that's how he's been taught to play. That's how he's played in his 2 years here. There's always another option out there. Go get a better shot. And, it's not a bad way for him to play. He's an efficient player. Like, we're criticizing him. He's at 16 points a game, 47% shooting, 82% from the line, 41% about from three. Tremendous overall stats. We'd like to see a little more volume from him, I think is what we're hearing. And what does that mean? That means that when he gets the ball, he has to understand he's probably the best offensive player on the team on the floor. And sometimes you have to create your own shot. And that's the next step to his game. I mean, everybody wants to see, like, nobody has to be Kobe Bryant and just dominate the game with isolation. But what he can do is in these big moments, when he sees the team 3 shots in the first half, I'm not bothered by his 2 points. I'm bothered that he only had 3 shots in the first half. If he went 1 for 10 with 2 points, I'd been like, he had a bad shooting game. I don't think he was aggressive enough with his offense. And he could, we've seen it this year. He can do like what McNeely does off the dribble, dive to the basket, create a shot for yourself or create a shot for somebody else. That is the kind of like what I like to see. And I believe he has that skill set. It's now a mindset issue with him, especially in the first half. They got to get somebody has to go off. If it's not Diarra, it's not Ball, then it has to be Karaban, because UConn, for all its offense and how good Terrace Reed is in the post, which I'm not a huge fan of post play. I'm a new age basketball guy. I think it clogs up and slows down the game. But Reed is pretty good in the post. So I mean, if not, dump it into him. I'd rather take 2 points slowly than just a bunch running around the perimeter. I mean, how many times did they do that weave and they're checking and the opponent is switching, which is the defense, and they never get below the 3-point line on the attack. They need to attack the basket and then kick out for 3. They need to hit the paint more. I criticize that. 23 assists on 27 baskets, tremendous ball offense. Yeah. I mean, we're not that's Hurley. You can't have a better offensive execution in the second half than they had. They just missed the defense at the end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that really is the beautiful game. I've been tracking their assists per field goal since last year. They've been on this at a really high ratio for a long time. It's tremendous stuff. And along these lines, we just should mention it. I love what we've seen from Jalen Stewart. Right, comes into this game. scores 10 quick points. They did get off to a kind of fast start on that front, but then where were you? Where were you the rest of that half? Where were you the rest of the game? I do like what we're seeing from him, though. I like the, like the potential, like what they're demonstrating. He's demonstrated. Same for solo ball. Just he's that 3-point guy. He's not afraid to take shots. He's not afraid to go for it. Needs to find a way to be more consistent on defense. That is a team-wide challenge. We should talk about the defense here. Not that we have anything super prescriptive to say, because I really think defensively and rebounding, it's kind of an effort thing. And then it's a coordination thing. So hopefully they improve on it over the course of the year. They take all their games more seriously. They take all their opponents more seriously. But, the defense is a problem. Hurley mentioned after the Providence game, opponents are able to just kind of ISO and attack some of their weakest defenders, and that's how they're scoring. That's what Providence did. And, Villanova was able to do something. Dixon and Poplar, 23 points, 18 points for those two guys. They shot all 13 of Villanova's free throws on the game, hitting 12. And, that's been the difference is that, especially last year, you put Steph Castle on one of those guys and he's neutralized. This year, not happening at all. So I'm not sure what the answer is. Even when McNeely's back, he's a solid defender. He's not going to go one-on-one on any team's best scorer. So, you can put Diarra on someone, but Diarra's not big enough to handle those, bigger guards and or a team with two larger guards on the perimeter the way UConn was able to last year with, even for their defensive flaws, Tristan Newton, Cam Spencer had good size and by the end of the season got solid enough defensively. So defense and rebounding, which, are kind of like identity things for Hurley and UConn. Those are things that are challenging, which I'm not even sure if there's necessarily a great, thesis for how that improves beyond kind of a little bit of effort and coordination. I'm not sure.
Yeah, with solo ball is the one I look at here. You need to be as enthusiastic on the defensive end as you are shooting the ball. And it's a maturation process. Obviously, he's athletic enough and long enough to be a good defender. He should be a good defender. I find, it's funny, they're missing probably the leader for rookie of the year in the NBA, Stephen Castle, who's probably a Drew Holiday, probably a first, second team All NBA defender on the perimeter guard in his career. So they're missing All NBA defensive league caliber guard, and then they're missing like the big guy Donovan Cleveland, who's wanted to. If you look at even his small stats in like 12, 13 minutes, he's such an impactful defensive player. I think we all saw it because if you watch a lot of basketball, how great the Castle on the perimeter and Klingon protecting the rim was as a defensive team last year. Now you get rid of that, so everything looks not as good. I like Tiernan Street as the anchor defensively. I think Samson Johnson, he gets blocks, but I feel his positioning and his rim protection isn't as good as Reed. So I have some concern there, but Johnson does a lot of other things. You can live with them 20 minutes piece. Well, on the perimeter, I worry. We have Ball, Caravan, and Caravan's going against smaller players. A lot of teams like to play three guard styles. Caravan's more of a power forward, small forward, classic wing player. McNeely's athletic, but he's not super, and he's 6'7", 6'8". But they really struggle with those big physical wings who are able to put it on the floor. You have to move your feet and be physical. They need to be physical on the perimeter without fouling. Now, that's, how do you do that? I don't know. In the Big East, you have no idea. But, what they can't do is rack up fouls like they did yesterday and then send these guys to the free throw line. That's also what you want to do. So I'm hoping that the prescription to be more physical doesn't result in more fouls, but they need to stop that kind of penetration. Maybe some double teams have to come. It's a scary proposition. I'm not a big fan of double teams because at least it's going to allow an open three at some point.
Mm-hmm. Well, John, it's certainly going to be an interesting month. I think we entered it thinking it might be a little bit of a smooth ride for the Huskies, but then in a very short amount of time, McNeely goes down. The team looks a little different. Villanova and Georgetown are looking better than expected. We saw that on Wednesday night. UConn heads to DC to take on a resurgent Georgetown team on Saturday. That's, for the first time in a long time, UConn kind of against it. You don't want to lose 2 in a row. You don't want to lose both on this road stretch, no matter what, right? No matter who's hurt. And then all the rest of these games, I mean, we saw how the Providence game went. Creighton, Butler at home, Xavier on the road, Hall at home January 29th. That might be McNeely's first game back, one of those, but it's going to be an interesting stretch here through January as the Huskies look to figure it out. I'll just add as a note, as we end things here, just what an absolute shame it is. UConn basketball across 2 programs sitting, just two of the greatest basketball players alive right now in Paige Bueckers and Liam McNeely, truly, just kind of hanging out on a boot on the sidelines. So, that was something I was thinking. You see both, you see the pics and the video from both games, and you see Paige over there in a boot, you see Liam over there in a boot, and you're just like, that's 2 future, just like 10-year pros just hanging out at UConn games. What a shame it is, but tons of talent to see, tons of interesting stuff going down in January. That is going to do it for this episode of the UConn Daily Podcast. We will be back next week, beginning our Monday, Wednesday schedule. Thank you all for listening and watching. And thank you, John, for being here.
Thank you, Aman, and thanks everybody for watching / listening.